do you still have contact with him, or?
That's interesting. We all went our different ways. We've lived all over the country. This group of men that I was stationed with, and what happens is that you're not stationed with people forever when you're in the service. You're with them for a short period of time. You become very close with them, and then they leave and they're gone, and you get separated, and you can't stay in great contact. And so that particular person, I have tried to reach him. I can't. I just haven't been successful. But I can tell you a similar story, and it's kind of all interwoven. When I was stationed in the Far East, which was in Japan, in Okinawa, Japan, I had met a fellow in this country who was a Pueblo Indian, and his name was Anthony Padilla. And Anthony Padilla was very dark-skinned, and he made me aware of the prejudice towards Mexicans and indigenous people, American Indians, such as the Pueblo. And I was also unaware of that. And so what occurred was we became very close. And coincidentally, when I was shipped out, he was shipped out. He went someplace else. I don't know where. I think he went to California. And I went to North Carolina. And then I went from North Carolina to Okinawa. He went from California to Okinawa. And we ended up on two different bases in Okinawa. And we were able to spend some time together there. And so we exchanged all our information. We knew each other's girlfriends and so forth. And I received a call from him about, I would say maybe 6 years ago. He was in New London, Connecticut, which is very near here in Hartford. And he was working as an electrician, which is what he did in the Marines. And he called me and he said he just went into the telephone book and kept calling Stewart's, and he got lucky. And so I wanted to meet with him, but he couldn't. He had a plane that was leaving from New York and going back to New Mexico, which is where he lives, and in an area called Pueblo, New Mexico. And I've been trying to reach him since, and I haven't been able to. So I don't really know, how he's doing either. But I can tell you one story about him. He was as naive as I was. He wasn't naive about the prejudice and the hatred because he'd experienced it where he grew up. But he was naive that I wasn't aware of it, that I was just completely new to this. And so we used to spend a lot of time together. And one of the things we used to do was when we had liberty, which would be on the weekends, we would get on a bus and we would travel to some part of the South, which is where we were stationed at that time, and just some place that we had never been. And then we'd get something to eat and, kind of walk around and learn things about the area. And then we'd get back on the bus. And in those days, they had buses that went along highways. And when they went along the highways, they would pick up people on the side of the road. There was no real bus stations because it was very rural. And so it was in the middle of the night. We were coming back. I can't remember from where, but we were coming back to our base, and it was around 10:30 at night. It was pitch black. And the bus pulled up, and this elderly black woman got on the bus, and she was, really quite old. She had a cane, and she was walking up the aisle uh, to find a seat. And I was taught that you always give a seat to, an elderly person or a woman. That was what you did. And so I jumped up, and Tony Padilla, my buddy, was on the inside seat. And so I said, "Here, ma'am, take my seat." And she said, "Oh, I can't do that." And I said, "Yes, you can." And so I made her sit down, and she sat down, and the bus screeched to a halt. And the bus driver got up, and he walked up the aisle to me, and he said, "That woman has to go to the back of the bus." And I said, "No, she doesn't." I gave her my seat. And I said, "I'll go to the back of the bus." And he said, "No, you won't go to the back of the bus." And that's when I realized that buses were segregated. All that time, I didn't realize that. And uh, and so I said, "Well, I gave her my seat in there, and I can tell you right now that there are no seats in the back of the bus. So I'm going to just stand here, and she has my seat." And he said, "No, we're not doing that." And and I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, you got to drive the bus." And so he said, I'm not moving this bus until that woman goes and stands in the back of the bus." And I said, "Well, she's going to stay right here with me and my friend." And he said, "Okay, well, we're just going to wait." And they did. They waited, and they waited, and they waited. And everybody in the bus was angry. I mean, all the whites were, and all the blacks were, because the bus wasn't moving. And lo and behold, see, there weren't nobody had phones like they do today. And so what he was doing was waiting for a state trooper to come along. And the state trooper came along, and he waved the state trooper down, and we were arrested and taken off the bus. And the woman had to go to the back of the bus. And so there were two empty seats in the front, myself and my friend. And the woman had to stand in the back of the bus. I don't know if, a younger person in the back of the bus gave their seat to her. I think they probably did, but we were arrested. And so all of that was, part of my service experience, and became part of me and my value system. So
Yeah, it's like two different mindsets clashing together.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so would you recommend um someone to go to the Marines, or?
Yes, I would. I would. I would just, the only caveat that I would say is that, you have to put everything in perspective. Some people go into the Marines and they become very, very rigid and very absolute. And by that, I mean what the Marines say is always never to be questioned, always to be accepted, no matter what it is. And I do not believe that. I think that's the kind of situation that we have politically in this country now. I think people, believe because they're a Republican or because they're a Democrat, or that they are right and the other side is wrong, and they don't listen to the other side, and etc. So.
Uh, second last question. Is there any message that you would like to send to my viewers and listeners?
Sent to where?
My viewers and listeners?
Oh, I just that I think the message that I would send to anyone today is trust science and care about other people and act accordingly.
Mhm. So if you would if you could describe this time period that we're living in right now with a song, what would it be?
It would be Stand By Me.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast. I want to thank the listeners for listening to this podcast. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well,
when the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me.